Try something right now before you read any further. Close your eyes for 10 seconds and try to predict your very next thought. Not the thought after that. The very next one. Go ahead. Could you do it? Almost nobody can. The moment you try to predict a thought, the trying itself becomes a new thought, and the one you were chasing slips away before you can catch it. That small, strange failure is where this whole question begins. Because if you're not choosing your next thought, who is? We've all felt it. You're washing dishes or driving somewhere familiar, or just staring out a window, and a thought shows up, uninvited. You weren't trying to think it. It just arrived. The way a stranger walks into a room you thought was empty. We tend to explain this away as background noise. But if we're honest, it points to something a lot stranger. Most of what fills your mind on any given day you never actually decided to think. To make this less abstract, imagine someone. Not a real person, just an illustrative story many of us would recognize. Let's call him Marcus. It's 1 a.m., and Marcus is lying in bed, wide awake. He sent an email to his boss 6 hours ago. One line. Nothing unusual. And now, in the dark, his mind keeps returning to it. Did that sentence sound defensive? Should he have added something? What if it's read the wrong way tomorrow morning? He didn't choose to think about this email at 1 a.m. He'd very much rather be asleep. He tries the obvious thing, telling himself to stop. Just stop thinking about it. It doesn't work. Trying to force a thought to stop in this story feels a little like trying to stop a river with his bare hands. The harder he pushes, the more turbulent it gets. At some point, lying there, a strange question surfaces underneath the noise. If I'm not choosing to think this, who exactly is doing the thinking? That question isn't new. According to the early Buddhist texts, it's one the Buddha himself sat with directly under a tree roughly 25 centuries earlier. The Majjhima Nikaya's accounts of his awakening describe him observing the mind the way a scientist observes a reaction in a controlled experiment. Patiently, repeatedly, without flinching from what he found. Thoughts rising and falling, one after another, like ripples on the surface of water, with no permanent, separate operator standing behind them, pulling the strings. The tradition has a name for how those ripples arise in the first place. Dependent origination, Paticcasamuppada. In its full form, this is a precise technical teaching, a 12-link chain describing how ignorance, craving, and clinging give rise to suffering over time. That's a much bigger teaching than what we're using it for here. But at its simplest level, the level useful for what's keeping Marcus awake, it points to one idea worth borrowing. Nothing appears out of nowhere. Every thought has conditions behind it. A sensation, a memory, an old habit, a passing feeling, overlapping, one leading into the next. Think of this as one small illustration of a much larger principle, not the whole of it. A thought about a deadline can lead to a memory of a past failure, which can spark a flicker of anxiety, which can bring up an old argument that has nothing to do with the deadline at all. One condition triggers the next, the way a single ripple can set off a pattern across still water. Nobody is standing at the center directing this. It's simply happening the way weather happens. Back in Marcus's story, restless, staring at the ceiling. His mind is doing exactly this. Planning tomorrow's reply, replaying an old criticism from a manager years ago that has nothing to do with tonight. Worrying about a version of tomorrow that hasn't happened yet and may never happen at all. Buddhist teachers sometimes call this the monkey mind. Restless, swinging from branch to branch, rarely resting anywhere for long. Just noticing this pattern without trying to fix it yet is already unusual. Most of us are so used to the noise that we've stopped hearing it as noise at all. We call it me thinking, and rarely question the assumption folded inside that sentence. So there's a natural next question, the same one the Buddha is described as having pursued. If thoughts keep appearing without being summoned, is there really someone in the center summoning them? Or is that sense of a summoner itself just one more thought, arising like all the rest? This is where the tradition offers something specific, not a belief to accept, but a way of looking, laid out across what are called the 5 aggregates. Form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Together, they're presented in the early texts as a kind of complete map of what a moment of experience is actually made of. The Khemaka Sutta, found in the Samyutta Nikaya, tells of a monk named Khemaka who took this seriously enough to search for himself inside it, literally. He examined his body, his feelings, his perceptions, his habitual patterns of mind, his awareness itself, and according to the sutta, he found sensations. He found perceptions. He found habits and patterns arising and passing. What he didn't find anywhere in the search was a fixed, separate thinker standing behind all of it, operating the controls. Even the felt sense of "I am the one thinking this" turned out, on close inspection, to be just another mental event, arising, present for a moment, and passing, exactly like everything else it seemed to be standing apart from. This doesn't mean Khemaka concluded that he didn't exist. It means the fixed, independent thinker he expected to find behind his experience simply couldn't be located in the way he assumed it would be. The person, the tradition would say, still exists conventionally, functionally, day to day. What doesn't hold up under close inspection is the idea of a separate, unchanging owner running the show from some control room behind it all. There's a second story, remembered in the later commentarial tradition rather than the earliest suttas, about a woman named Khema, a queen once known across the kingdom for her beauty, and, by her own account later in life, quite attached to it. Her husband, a follower of the Buddha, is said to have gently arranged for her to visit the monastery. There, according to the story passed down through the commentaries, the Buddha presented a vision of a woman of extraordinary beauty, and let that vision age rapidly before her eyes, moving through years in moments. Whatever exactly happened in that hall, the tradition remembers it as the moment something in Khema's understanding shifted completely, not through argument but through direct seeing. She went on, the accounts say, to become known for uncommon wisdom. Both stories point at the same discovery from two different angles. Nothing we usually call self turns out to be fixed. Not the body, not a feeling, not a thought. Everything arises from conditions, holds together briefly, and changes. And crucially, this isn't the same as saying nothing is there at all. It's saying that what's there doesn't match the solid, separate, permanent thing we assumed we were looking for. Back in the present, in Marcus's story, none of this makes the 1 a.m. thoughts stop. But something else becomes possible, the same shift the Buddha is remembered as pointing his students toward, again and again. Not silencing the mind, but changing your relationship to what's already happening inside it. The Satipatthana Sutta, one of the central texts on meditation in this tradition, describes this practice in plain terms, paying close, non-judgmental attention to what's arising, moment by moment, without getting swept into the story each thought is telling. There's a metaphor the tradition returns to often: the mind as an open sky, and thoughts as clouds passing through it. The clouds come, the clouds go. Some are heavy, some are light, some block the sun entirely for a while. The sky itself doesn't become a cloud. It isn't damaged by bad weather, and it isn't improved by good weather. It simply holds whatever is passing through it, moment to moment, without becoming any of it. This isn't a claim that ordinary awareness is some far-off mystical state. The texts describe it more simply as a capacity that's already present, not something to manufacture from nothing. The tradition also remembers a monk named Anuruddha, who struggled badly with meditation early on, constantly pulled away, constantly distracted, unable to settle. According to the account, the Buddha didn't tell him to stop thinking. He told him to simply stay aware of thoughts and sensations arising and passing, without chasing them and without pushing them away. Over time, the story says, Anuruddha developed a steadiness of attention that carried him through the rest of his life. Modern research on attention offers something worth mentioning here, cautiously, because science and this 2,000-year-old contemplative tradition are asking related questions, not proving the same answer. Some studies on long-term meditators suggest the brain retains a kind of built-in capacity to observe its own activity, and that sustained practice can be associated with changes in how reactively the brain responds to emotional triggers. It's an echo worth noting, not a verdict. Right now, try the exercise the old texts point toward directly. For a few seconds, don't think about your thoughts. Just look for the thinker. Not the thoughts themselves, the one who's supposedly having them. Where is it exactly? What does it feel like, apart from the thoughts, feelings, and sensations already present? Most people who try this honestly find the same thing Khemaka is described as finding. Not an absence of experience, but an absence of the separate operator they expected to be running it. There's a story harder and heavier than the others that the tradition doesn't shy away from, the Angulimala Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya. It tells of a man remembered as a killer, responsible for the deaths of many people, who encountered the Buddha directly, and whose entire trajectory changed afterward. This isn't a light example, and it shouldn't be flattened into a tidy lesson about changing your thoughts. What the sutta points to is something more specific. The idea that even deeply destructive patterns of mind are conditioned, shaped by causes, not fixed, unchangeable essences of a person. That doesn't erase harm or excuse it. It suggests, according to the teaching, that the patterns driving harmful action can, under the right conditions, be seen clearly enough to be interrupted. That's a very different claim from just think positive. It's closer to even the most entrenched mental patterns are patterns, not a permanent self that could never have been otherwise. There's a simpler teaching from the Alagaddapama Sutta, easier to sit with, the parable of the raft. A raft is useful for crossing a river. Once you've reached the other shore, you don't need to keep carrying it on your back. Thoughts in this teaching are treated the same way. Useful when they're doing work, solving a problem, making a plan, learning something. Not something to cling to once that work is done. The practice isn't eliminating thought. The Buddha is not remembered as someone who tried to stop thinking entirely. He taught for 45 years, spoke with kings and farmers, answered questions, told stories. The aim was never a blank mind. The aim, as the tradition frames it, is closer to this, knowing when thinking is a tool being used, and when it's simply noise running on its own, uninvited, mistaken for something more solid than it is. Somewhere tonight, someone like Marcus is going to lie in the dark, replaying a sentence they sent hours ago, wondering who exactly is running this constant commentary, and finding, if they look closely enough, not a villain to blame and not a self to fix, but simply weather. Conditions. Ripples on water that were never going to stay still. The Kilamalunkia Sutta describes a well-known moment in the texts where the Buddha was asked a series of difficult metaphysical questions about the nature of self, the universe, what happens after death, and he said nothing at all. Not because he didn't know. According to the account, some questions dissolve the moment you stop needing an answer to feel whole. Maybe that's closer to what this whole inquiry was always pointing toward, not a better answer to who's thinking this, but the quiet discovery that the question itself gets a little lighter the moment you stop insisting someone has to be found running the show.